So this year I decided to spend my Africa Day weekend here in Nairobi. And I have to say it's the greatest decision that I made, because for the first time, I am celebrating Africanness in a city that encompasses Africanness and the dynamicness of being in a world-class African city that is evolving, changing itself, and gearing itself for an era where Africa is going to be controlling the world. And coming from Southern Africa, I never knew what a world-class African city is until I came to Nairobi. See, for many years they told us that Southern Africa was the heart of Africa. It was the gateway into Africa. It was where investment was rushing into Africa because we had the best infrastructure, the best human talent, and because of the largest white population on the African continent, it meant that we were the future of Africa. It's nonsense. They lied to us. You come here into Nairobi, you feel the sense of an African city controlled by Africans that is readying itself for the future of an Africa that will control the world. And what is ironic is that you immediately start to feel the backwardness, the colonialness of Southern Africa. Southern Africa doesn't feel as dynamic and gearing or evolving towards a better Africa as Nairobi does. It feels backward. It feels stagnant. It feels almost stale, because none of what is happening in Southern Africa talks to them changing or gearing themselves or evolving themselves into leading Africa into an African century. Southern Africa feels like a vestige of the past, feels like a colonial era that just has a little bit of new buildings here and there, a few retard roads here and there. Whereas when you're in Nairobi, I'm on a 12-lane highway right now that comes from Mombasa into Nairobi. 6 lanes going into one direction, 3 of them non-tolled, 3 of them tolled. So when you want to travel slow and you don't want to pay a toll, you stay in the 3 lanes on the outside and you're going to get to Nairobi in less congestion, because these 12 lanes actually manage the traffic well. But if you want to go express, quicker, faster, and you feel you're getting late for your meetings, jump into the toll road at any time, pay your toll, and you move faster. This is a country that already has freeways that are similar to Johannesburg. In fact, some of the freeways here are better than Johannesburg, but nobody told us. Then you've got the walkways. As pedestrians are dropped off by buses, as pedestrians go to work, the people that are planning this country understood that we're still a third world country where we've got pedestrians that need to walk, we've got the poor that need to walk. They've got walkways across the freeways. Because the economy is controlled by the people who look like the most poorest, they are taking the poor into consideration in their planning and construction of this economy. Office parks everywhere, some of them that don't even have people. High-rise buildings, office towers that are prepared for future investment. And you ask yourself, why do they have all these big roads that are not being fully utilized? Why these big buildings? They're preparing for the era where this country is going to be the capital of Africa. They're preparing for investors to come in. They're preparing for the best skills in IT to come into what is Africa's Silicon Valley, because one day they want to control the world in terms of IT. They are prepared, and you can feel it. The office parks tell you the story. The high-rise buildings tell you the story. They've got apartments. It's a construction site, this country. The last time I saw the level of construction of buildings is when I was in Dubai in 1999, 2000, when they were beginning to build Dubai into what it is. I can feel that in Kenya. It's a mini Dubai. You can't compare the number of high-rise apartments that are being built in Kenya to anything that is happening in Southern Africa. Kenya is light years ahead. They've got high-rise apartments, luxury apartments, high-rise apartments for the middle income, high-rise apartments for the poor. Even in their townships, they've got high-rise apartments. They're getting rid of the British colonial-style flats and complexes and little cluster houses. They're getting bought up. And guess who is buying all this property? Somalians. The Somalians that are so hated in Johannesburg have developed Nairobi in a way you will never believe. They're the ones buying up the old flats that look decrepit, like the ones you find in Harare, the ones you find in Hillbrow. They're buying them up, bringing them down, building new skyscrapers, building apartments all over the place. And you know, some lady that lived in Zimbabwe who's now living here in Kenya said to me, the difference between Harare or Joburg with Nairobi is dynamic. If you don't go to town for 3 months, you will get there and buildings that you used to see are gone and there's new high rises coming up. And she says, but in Zimbabwe, Harare doesn't change for the past 30 years. Hillbrow doesn't change for the past 30 years. That shows that East Africa is evolving, is molding itself into the future city that Africa needs. We are not doing that in Southern Africa. And while we hate foreigners in places like Johannesburg, they love foreigners here. And the Somalis that you hate so much are the biggest investors who are changing the landscape and the infrastructure of this country. Arabs, Chinese, not white people. They're not waiting for Europeans to build their city for them. And so therefore, when you look at the infrastructure, when you look at the design language, it's uniquely African. It's uniquely different to what we have in South Africa and Harare. We're still waiting for Europeans to come and develop us here. They're developing themselves, and they're developing a country that speaks their language. The roads, the designs of the buildings, the architecture, it speaks of Kenya. It speaks of an era of evolution for the past 600 years, with the Arabic mixing together with the African, mixing together with the Asian. We've got to learn in Southern Africa because we're getting left behind. And our leaders have got to stop celebrating mediocre developments and mediocre projects, because here they're doing big projects. Rail infrastructure, road infrastructure, accommodation, the data, telecommunications is quick, fast, efficient. They're building hotels. They are building a country that is ready to lead Africa. And Africa, Southern Africa, you're not going to compete with this because you guys are lagging behind.